Hello, I'm John Rossi, a touring drummer with a love of all things animal. When I'm on the road, I visit as many zoos, aquariums... Hey, wait a minute. What's going on? Hey, what's going on there? Hello? Hello? We interrupt your regularly scheduled program to bring you Rossifari Zoo news. News you can use from the world of zoos and conservation. Every week, we bring you breaking news and analysis from around the globe, featuring the animals you love and the people who care for them. And here's your anchorman, John Rossi.
Hi, hello, how are you? Welcome back to Rossifari Zoo News, your look at everything going on in the world of zoos, aquariums, conservation, and general animal weirdness. So y'all, this week, I am recording this episode very, very late. It's already technically Friday morning, after completing the first couple days of Hadestown Teen Edition at the Gretna Theater in Mount Gretna, Pennsylvania. And I have to tell y'all, this one is so much fun, and it's such a unique and different show than what I normally get to do, and it's been a really good time. It's also been a crazy, ridiculous week. Just insanity. I have been going nonstop all day, every day. And so, it's just been one of those weeks, but it's all been good stuff. And that's what matters, right? That's the important part. So hard to complain about that. But in light of that, I will tell you that you should listen to the outtake after the credits today, because it's not going to be the normal thing. And I think y'all are going to get a kick out of it. So with that said, this is Rossifari Zoo News, and it is a crowdsourced zoo news program. So if you see anything that you think is zoo news worthy, if it's on the socials, you can just tag me at Rossifari, wherever you follow along, or at Rossifari Pod on the TikTok machine. And you can also email me stories, rossifaripod@gmail.com, and then I'll say your name at the end of the episode, unless I forget because I'm too tired, which is occasionally a risk. But so I wanted to do something here at the start of this this episode, where I did a little, I guess, a giveaway, a contest, on the podcast this week, and I asked people to send me their favorite things about the podcast for the last 5 years. And I wanted to share some of those with y'all. So some of the responses that I got were, I've been inspired by so many episodes and guests, can't name just one. Holiday specials are the best, which I enjoyed that. Ren Howell got a shout out for being the best thing ever on the podcast. Another person said that they remember Paul Reinhardt most from the early days, and they always love zoos. And I love when people call zoo news zoos. Z-E-W-S is how we spell that. Another person said that they first learned about how much research and effort is going into EEHV from following, which I think is really special. Somebody, and those of you who are deep fans can probably guess who, mentioned that they love zoo news and Okapis. And then somebody mentioned that they really loved Trip talking about the EMA. And then, there was a person who said that they loved the episode with Metro Richmond Zoo about Poppy. The Great Ape-isode got some. And then it started. It started to happen, y'all. People just kept saying how much they love Danny Larson. So many people reached out to tell me that they absolutely love Danny. And we had some other people. I don't want to read all of them, but Loana got a really great compliment. The Tanganyika leadership episode got some. Another holiday special shout out. But time and time again, the thing that kept popping up was how great Danny is. And so, you know what? Screw you guys. I don't like this. I'm supposed to be the star of the show. No, I'm kidding. I just love that so many of you have gotten to fall in love with the amazing person that I also love as a sister. And I just think that's so great. And I just had to share that with y'all. And I love that, I didn't know that was coming when I had her interview me for the first episode of the season. So that was a lot of fun. And I hope y'all enjoyed that one too. But yeah, for all of you who love Danny, you are very much not alone. And so with all of that said, I think it's time to get to it. So let's do it, y'all. So we're going to start off with a headline story this week, and it is a bit of a controversial one, to put it mildly. And it's coming from the Nuremberg Zoo in southern Germany, where the decision was made to kill 12 healthy guinea baboons. And the reason this decision was made was that zoo officials said that they had no choice, as they were unable to transfer the animals to any other zoos, and contraception measures failed to slow the growth of the group. The facility is set up to house around 25 baboons, but the population has swelled to 40 members currently. And that includes, obviously, not just having not enough space for the animals, but also because of that, there has been increased aggression amongst the animals. And so the decision was made to cull some of these animals. And that's not a term that you hear very often in U.S. zoos, but it is something that is more common in European zoos. You may remember there was a big controversy a few years ago because one of the European zoos needed to cull a giraffe and then decided to feed their lions with the animal's carcass. And, that actually makes a lot of sense. And one of the things that I find interesting is that some of the most vocal opponents of those kinds of things are the so-called animal rights activists or anti-zoo people who say that zoos aren't good because animals don't get to experience what they would experience in the wild. But then when you give them, an experience akin to what they would experience in the wild, or at least the right kind of meat and everything, then those are the same people who are up in arms. And I find this just such a fascinating difference in, IAZA and AZA. And I even mentioned at the last AAZV conference, the Zoo Veterinarians Conference, that it was a combined U.S. and European zoo vets. And it was really interesting because the European vets that were presenting often spoke about culling and about making decisions like that and about avoiding birth control and letting, their animals give birth and then just getting rid of the surplus offspring if that's what was necessary. And you could definitely see some hackles getting raised from some of the U.S. zoo vets. But their argument is that giving birth and going through that experience is a part of these animals' natural lives, and that it shouldn't be up to an SSP or a breeding program to determine whether or not those animals get to do that. But also, if you don't have a good home for the animal, then you can't just let it live and you can't just throw it back out into the wild. We all know that doesn't work. So you cull it. And it's such a logical argument that also makes my heart hurt because I don't like it, right? And that's really what it comes down to. And so culling happens in Europe all the time, but in this case, it's one of those stories that has gotten a lot more publicity than most of the culling does. And I find it fascinating when something like that happens. And I also find it especially fascinating because European anti-zoo groups are up in arms and saying that this was wildly inappropriate and are trying to bring lawsuits, even though zoos do this thing all the time, and IAZA actually encourages it. So yeah, it's really interesting, and I will be curious to see if at some point some legal action is able to work and make European zoos change this policy. But I have to be honest, as much as it bothers me on like an ick level, I also can't truly say that I don't get where they're coming from. And that if you want zoos to be as naturalistic as possible, then, you know, you would allow breeding. But then that also gets into some weird places because, like, you know, I mean, are you going to allow inbreeding? Are you going to allow all kinds of stuff? I guess so. And you just call them. But I don't know. It's a really unique, really interesting, and like I said, really controversial topic. So as always, I'm very curious to hear your take on this and where you're coming from with it. And I'm especially interested if there are any of you who either work with or just are fans of animals that haven't been allowed to breed for whatever reason, if you would rather them have the opportunity to do that and then have their offspring culled, or whether you think it's better off how it currently is, you know. And I've talked to enough keepers and vets and stuff where most species, again, we are talking about thousands of species, so I'm generalizing here, but most species don't get upset. They don't care that they lose their child. I mean, you know, so many times wild animals abandon their offspring, right? And so, yeah, when it comes to the culling of juveniles, that's an interesting aspect of it. But in this case, it was just, you know, part of a troop that needed to go because they had too many. They weren't even offspring. So, yeah, interesting topic and something I am really curious to hear your take on. So feel free to reach out and let me know what you think. And that brings us to our births for the week. All right, so y'all know that we are in the greatest time of the year, which is, of course, when red panda birth announcements happen. And so we have a few more of those for you this week. The Bristol Zoo has announced the birth of a red panda cub, though they call it a kit. I guess you have to be all cool and European. I don't know. But anyway, the cub was born to first-time parents Niora and Leia, and the little one is doing well and is being raised by mom without human interference needed. And then a pair of red panda twins has been born at Amazon World on the Isle of Wight. And Elizabeth Charles, yes, who sent me this story, thought I wouldn't know that it's pronounced Isle of Wight and thought I would say something stupid like Isle of Wig Hit or something. Despite the fact that there was a very famous music festival on the Isle of Wight. But honestly, in Elizabeth's defense, like, fair. I still don't know how to say Oregon? I don't know. Anyway, origami. Anyway, this cub was born to 10-year-old mother Zhao and 10-month-old Flint. And the pair had actually been put together with the expectation of future breeding, but apparently Flint stepped up his game and did the thing this year. And yes, by the thing, I mean sexy time. And while we're hanging out in the UK, the UK is popping out okapis lately. So I guess this is for Colleen. But last week it was the Chester Zoo, and then this week the Dublin Zoo has announced a new okapi. Born to mom Lumara, the calf is thriving, and I guess this is just the latest example of the Irish having to do what, you know, British people do. Kidding. Haha, love you guys. Also, interestingly enough, Ozzy Osbourne passed away recently, and a white rhino was born at Santa Rosa Safari Park on the day that Ozzy died. So guess what they named the white rhino? You guessed it. Wait, you did guess it, right? It was Ozzy. Okay, cool. Anyway, Central Park Zoo has welcomed a Gentoo penguin chick to the colony. The chick was foster reared by a pair of parents other than its own, which is something that is fairly common with penguins, and is currently doing quite well, though it won't be out on habitat until it's around 4 months old, after it's finished molting into its adult feathers and shows that it is able to swim. The Fort Wayne Zoo has welcomed a new male clouded leopard to Mother Rari and Father Sanji. The little one is doing quite well, and a name will be announced soon. A new Maasai giraffe calf was born at Cameron Park Zoo recently. Mom is doing a great job, so the staff is actually just watching the young one and mom with closed circuit television. They're ready to step in if needed, but so far, it's not needed, which is always great news. And speaking of great news, an Amur leopard has been born at the Brookfield Zoo. Now, this species is the rarest big cat in the world, and as such, every birth of an Amur leopard is really important to the species. So they're one of those species. Last week, I talked about how whenever I see a Przewalski's horse, I'm like, holy cow, you guys are the thing. Like, you were extinct in the wild and now you're not, and yay. And just seeing an Amur leopard at a zoo has that same effect on me, not because they're a conservation success story yet, but because they're such a rare animal that, like, it's cool to see endangered animals in zoos, but to see this species that, man, we're just so close to losing, and to be able to watch people fall in love with it and just stare at it and absorb how amazing these creatures are, it always makes me feel just amazing about the incredible mission that good zoos have. And of course, after we're done with our births here, we have to move on to our deaths, and we do have a few animals to say goodbye to this week. The Maryland Zoo has said goodbye to a warthog that was absolutely beloved. His name was Hodor, and he started off at the zoo as a very shy and standoffish warthog. But the team really worked hard to grow a strong bond with him, and over the years, he lost those qualities around his people and actually grew to have really strong relationships with his people. Unfortunately, he was diagnosed with a liver disease that was untreatable, but the fact that the team was able to build those close relationships made it so that he was able to get medical treatment until that was no longer working. And then they loved him so much that they were right by his side and went to say goodbye. So, yeah, I love stories about relationship building like that. It makes me happy. The team at ABQ Bio Park recently said goodbye to an animal that was actually new to the park. Elok was a new resident Sumatran orangutan who underwent a severe onset of gastrointestinal distress and then, during the emergency procedure to treat it, experienced a cardiac event and was unable to be revived by CPR. Although he was new to the zoo, Elok had a very loving personality and had quickly bonded with his team that, even though, again, he was a new animal to the facility, misses him tremendously already. And, you know, man, I can't help but think, like, obviously the hardest thing is if you lose, like, a new baby or an animal that you've had for a really long time and you really love, but all of the hope that comes with getting a new animal and all of the excitement and all of that, and then to just have to say goodbye quickly, my heart absolutely goes out to the team. Jabari, the male lion at Zoo Miami, has passed away. Jabari had been battling arthritis for many years, and the treatments were no longer working. Jabari was a father, and his journey of fatherhood was actually documented by our former guest Ron McGill in his book Pride of a Lion. And between being such an iconic animal at such a huge and iconic zoo, Zoo Miami, and the book, Jabari actually had a huge fan base and was just beloved. So this is a big loss, not only for the zoo and for the local community, but this is the loss of a lion that a whole lot of people knew and loved. An emu named Sydney has passed away at the Racine Zoo. Sydney was over 30 years old, with the life expectancy of wild emus being around 10 years, so that's just incredibly impressive. And, you know, a lot of relationships built. We're really hitting the relationship angle in the death stuff this week, but that's because that's what makes it so hard, but also so amazing that these animals get to live these lives. And then last but not least this week, an adorable fennec fox named Barkley has passed away at the Smithsonian's National Zoo and Conservation Biology Institute. He was 11 years old and was born with chronic skeletal issues. And honestly, the fact that he made it to 11, which is the median life expectancy of a fennec fox, shows just how incredible the care that he received was. Because honestly, with the skeletal issues that he had, he would not have made it long in the wild at all. And honestly, could have even had a shorter life in human care. So props to the team at the National Zoo. And then moving on from births and deaths, we get to the rest of our Zoo News section. Only a few stories this week. So Zoo Atlanta has been accepted as one of the newest members of the Wildlife Confiscations Network. This organization, which operates under the Wildlife Trafficking Alliance, is a program of the AZA and is the first of its kind pilot program that strives to reduce wildlife trafficking and increase support for law enforcement by providing a coordinated system to ensure the welfare of confiscated live wildlife. And yes, you can tell I stole that and didn't write it. That was from their announcement. But I think this is really cool, and I think this is really important. And I think that, you know, I've been to the airport in Atlanta, and I'm guessing that that is one of the places that is a hotbed for this kind of thing, just because nothing against Atlanta or the airport, just because it's such a big airport with so many transfers and everything. So, yeah, I think having Zoo Atlanta on board for this really important project is just wonderful news. And then back in February, a cheetah cub named Rosie was born at Taronga Western Zoo by emergency C-section to mom Siri. Siri's recovery from the surgery went well, but it did make it so that she didn't produce any milk, and the complications both cheetahs faced were such that it was impossible to reunite the two. As such, Taronga Western Zoo adopted Ziggy, a Labrador Kelpie Collie mixed puppy that was brought in to help Rosie learn to be strong, confident, and well socialized. Now, we've shared plenty of stories like this before. Obviously, San Diego, Columbus, Cincinnati, right? We all know that this is a thing. But these stories always make me so happy, and I don't ever want us as people who are like zoo nerds or work in the field or whatever to take for granted how incredible some of the things that we see frequently are. Like, they have figured out how to adopt a puppy to help raise a cheetah and have it be successful. And it is a program that they can do worldwide now, right? That's incredible. So, yeah, I really wanted to take the time to share that story with y'all and to give praise to, Taronga Western Zoo for doing this incredible thing. And also it gives me an opportunity to say, hey, Taronga, g'day. You're doing a great job, mates. Because I know that my Australian listeners lose their minds when I do my terrible Australian accent. Maddie Pats, I hope that you enjoyed that I said g'day instead of g'day. You're welcome. All right. And then last but not least in zoo news, here's a fun story. The Denver Zoo was recently talking about what goes into taking care of Marshmallow, the albino wallaby that lives at the zoo. In order to keep Marshmallow healthy, the animal care team actually applies sunscreen daily on her ears, face, and tail. But the best part is that not only do they do sunscreen, but Marshmallow actually helps. because the team has trained Marshmallow to apply her own sunscreen to her nose. They place a sponge soaked in sunscreen in her treats, and she basically applies it to her face as she reaches in to get her snacks. And since touching a wallaby nose can be tricky, that is a really great way to get done what needs to be done without stressing out the animal. Anytime treats are involved, it's a good thing. Marshmallow paid me to say that last line. All right, and that brings us to...
Stereotypical Animal Podcast theme song. Here to bring you to conservation news.
Another week, another rediscovery. Camera traps set up in Malaysia's Sabah state have confirmed the presence of a Eurasian otter in the country, the first time one has been seen there in a decade. One of the cool parts of this discovery is that it was made by Panthera, which is a group that studies wild cats. The Panthera camera traps captured the evidence of the otter and made the evidence available to conservationists working with the species. So obviously, the more collaboration we see like this, the better off all animals will be. And a new species of manta ray has been discovered. It has actually been known or suspected, depending on who you ask, that there was this species for quite a while, but there had never been a specimen discovered in a way that could be researched deeply enough to truly establish whether or not it is in fact a unique species. That is, until one washed up on a beach in South Florida. The specimen was eventually taken to the Smithsonian, where it now serves as the holotype for this new species. Now that it is documented and understood, the next step is determining the conservation status of the species to see what needs to be done to help save these incredible animals, if, they need to be saved. And if not, humans will eventually ruin it and need to be anyway. So we need to know where they're at, is the point. This is kind of cool. So there's an interesting story here about North American shorebird populations. Most of the populations are declining, but then certain groups are seemingly randomly doing well, although it's obviously not random. And one of these groups is the American oyster catcher, which has seen a 45% increase in their population in the past 17 years. So why are oyster catchers doing well? Oyster populations are doing well along the U.S. shores thanks to conservation efforts. And oyster catchers catch oysters and eat them. So this is important because, everything's connected, right? We talk about that a lot on here. And I doubt that most of the scientists who are out there trying to save oysters are doing it because they're passionate about one particular species of shorebird. But by doing the work for oysters, not only are those populations thriving, but so are the oyster catcher populations. And that's just incredible, right? And it shows how much one change can make, even outside of the main scope of a project. And it gives me a lot of hope and joy. And then last in conservation news this week, Alexandra Ela is a professional tennis player with a love of sea turtles. And she recently donated tens of millions of dollars to a sea turtle protection project in the Philippines. She actually not only donated money, but got involved in helping out directly by volunteering and doing hands-on work with the turtles to help save them. So hopefully her fame and money will not only help turtles, but also help raise awareness in the Philippines about the need to help save turtles. But just huge props to really any celebrity that wants to give tens of millions of dollars to conservation efforts like this. And even more so, man, let me see you doing that hands-on work. That's really cool. That makes me really, really happy. And that brings us to...
It's time for other news. It's time for other news. Hey, now, right now, now it's time. It's time for other news. Hey, it's a segue to the part called other news.
All right, so a new study shows that red-footed tortoises experience long-term moods similar to those of mammals and birds. This is the first study that shows that some herp species experience these kinds of moods, and this is an especially important study as so many reptile species are kept as pets. It's one thing to make sure you're providing for the physical welfare of an animal, but to make sure that emotional needs are being met, especially over the long term, is a larger burden and one that people should consider before getting reptiles as pets. It's also something that is very worth looking into for the various reptile houses and such at zoos and aquariums. Are the animals getting what they need to have good long-term mental health? At least in the case of red-footed tortoises, we now know that this is a thing. So, I'll be curious to see what this does for welfare standards in the future. And if the study, when applied to other herps, shows that, more reptiles and maybe amphibians and are experiencing long-term moods and what that will mean. Very curious to see how that all turns out. And then last but not least in other news this week, a trove of fossilized animals was recently discovered in the Bright Angel Formation of the Grand Canyon. These fossils give paleontologists the best look yet at what life was like in that area. And actually, they paint an incredibly interesting picture of what the evolutionary arms race animals at the time were going through. And that's important and cool, I guess. But let's be honest, that is absolutely not why I'm telling you this. I'm telling you this because some of the species that were found fossilized are newly discovered species to our scientific community. And in particular, one of the species found is a newly discovered species of penis worm, which is apparently a thing. Penis worms are a group of unsegmented marine worms that sometimes look like a human penis. Hence the name. So yes, I 100% told you this story so I could teach y'all that there are things called penis worms. And no, they are not an STI. They're penis worms. And yeah, I'm really just enjoying saying the term penis worms. You're welcome. Penis worms. Alrighty, and that brings us to our animal holidays for the week and month, because it's a new month. It's August, which seems insane because January was yesterday, but August is Asian Elephant Awareness Month, National Catfish Month, National Parks Month, and August is for Antelope Month. It's also Miles's birthday month, but that's not an animal holiday. I mean, he is an animal. Humans are animals, but you know what I'm saying. Anyway, for the individual days, the first is Marine Protected Areas Day, which is awesome since we've had so many great stories lately about new marine protected areas being proposed or implemented. And it's also a Manga Bay Awareness Day. The second is Golden Lion Tamarin Day. The third through the 9th is International Assistance Dog Week. The 4th is Owl Awareness Day and Clouded Leopard Day. The 5th is World Tomastoma Day. And the 7th is Sea Serpent Day. And those are your animal holidays for the week. All right, so there you have it, folks. Another brilliant, wonderful, and if I do say so myself, pretty impressive episode of Zoo News. Sorry, did I mention I'm really tired? Anyway, before we get going, I want to say thank you to my patrons, especially my Red Panda level patrons, Dr. Laura Shank, Dr. Stephen Williamson, Barbara Bennett, Jenny Owens, Melissa Reed, Carrie Kirkpatrick, John Lewis, who is also here for stickers, and Kevin Williams. And speaking of those stickers, I just got the final design for your next Rossifari stickers, and it's so good. Y'all remember the episode from Tanganyika where we talked about a honey badger that had a piece of emotional support grass. Well, that's this month's sticker, and it is every bit as adorable as you expect it to be. So I am excited for y'all to get that. And then I'd like to say thank you to all of the people who contributed stories this week, including Anya Keene, Colleen Linehan, Kim Cooley-Croninger, Carrie Kirkpatrick, Kevin Williams, Emily Rockbuck, Sam Evans, Anna McEachran, Maddie Pat, g'day, Ken Tryon, Dr. Laura Shank, Elizabeth Charles, Ali Malensky, Kay Malensky, The Malenskys, Dr. Natalie Taco, Amanda Berg, Dr. Zoe Rossi, Jay Meredith, Ann Yoshioka, Barbara Bennett, Holly Page, and Laura Mincy. Thank you all so much for sharing those lovely things with me. And hey, before we get going, don't forget the outtake after the credits is going to be something that I think y'all will get a kick out of. So make sure you stay tuned. And don't forget, friends, the words Newsy Credits backwards are Steiner Q1.
The Rossifari podcast is produced, hosted, and engineered by John Rossi. Editing and fact-checking by John and Dr. Zoe Rossi. Our theme song is Sevens by Nathan Burke, performed by Nathan and John. Interrupting John theme and additional voices by Taylor Isaac Gray. You can reach John directly on Instagram and Facebook at Rossifari or by email at rossifaripod@gmail.com. Rossifari is part of the Daydreamer Media Network. Now, stop listening to me and go visit a zoo.
All right, y'all. So this outtake actually needs some setup because it's not a traditional outtake. So I mentioned that I recorded this very, very late or early Friday morning, depending on how you look at it. And I was just so tired. I played 2 shows of Hadestown today. Plus we had rehearsal time. And there was just a lot going on. It was super duper hot. And Miles came to see the show and Zoe came to see the show. And there's all kinds of cool stuff. Again, all great stuff. But I was exhausted. And so I was laying in bed instead of recording this podcast. And Zoe was like, hey, you need to go record your podcast. And so, as I am wont to do when she tells me I have to do something, I just started doing it in bed, not actually recording, but I just started speaking and saying, pretending that I was doing the podcast. And she laughed and then said, no, you're not recording. And so I grabbed my iPhone and pulled up voice memos and hit record. And the next couple of minutes, I think you'll enjoy this. So, we'll see you on Tuesday. But until then, have a listen.
Hi, hello, how are you? Welcome back to Rossifari Zoo News, your look at everything going on in the world of zoos, conservation, and general animal weirdness. My wife is currently playing with my hair, so if you hear weird noises on here, it's my wife playing with my hair, or more likely paradiddle chewing a bone, because that's louder than the hair thing. Okay, so I'm tired, but I have lots of zoo news stuff to tell you. But I don't have my notes in front of me and my eyes are closed. So there were some baby red pandas born in places. None were announced in the U.S. this week, but some in like the UK or something, and probably somewhere else. Australia? No, it's somewhere over in Europe. And there were like 3 total, so 2 at one place and 1 at the other. And the mom of the one is 10 years old and the dad's 10 months old, which is scandalous if you ask me. But they did the thing. And by the thing, I mean sex. So that's good. And then also, there are knots in my hair, Zoe, be careful. Something else probably happened. Oh, there was an okapi born in Ireland, and I'm going to make a joke about the fact that there was one born in England last week, and it's like Ireland always has to do what the English do. That's a thing, great. Seems good. I don't know. And then, Some other animals were born, which is cool. And then some animals died, which is less cool.
Do you remember any of the animals who died?
Do I remember any of the animals who died? Yes. A warthog at the Maryland Zoo passed away. And it was very sad because the warthog was very standoffish when he got there, but the team worked really hard to train said warthog and to build relationships. And by the end of their by the end of his life, they had really good relationships, and they were able to help him with medical stuff because they were very trusting. The warthog was very trusting of the people, which is cool. And also a fennec fox died at the Smithsonian Zoo, and it was a fennec fox that had a chronic bone disease that it was born with. But because of the amazing care that the zoo gave him, he lived to be 11, which is the median life expectancy of a healthy fennec fox. So it goes to show just how awesome of a job they did taking care of said fennec fox. So those are some of your births and deaths for the week. And then there were some other zoo news stories, including something about the Denver Zoo that I can't remember to save the life of me. And probably some other zoos. Taronga Zoo, maybe? Some zoo in Australia had a cheetah cub months ago, and it ended up being an emergency cesarean section. And mom and baby are both doing fine now, but they couldn't be reunited because they both had medical issues. And so they have adopted a dog to help raise the cheetah. And while you hear about that, at places like Columbus and San Diego and Cincinnati in the States, I haven't heard of it in Australia before. It might be a thing, but I just love every time zoos do that because cheetahs and dogs being friends is really cool. So, good job with that. And one of the red pandas from earlier was born on the Isle of Wight. And I know that because Elizabeth Charles sent me the story and made sure that I know that it's actually pronounced Isle of Wight and not Isle of Wight, which is what it looks like. And I want to be offended by the fact that she did that, but let's be real. Fair.
And just to be clear to y'all, this is just what it's like living with me. I did not do that as I'm going to throw this at the end of the podcast. After the fact, I thought it would be funny to throw here now. But that's just life with John Rossi. So you can send your condolences and, sympathies to Zoe Rossi, care of Rossifari. All right. We'll see you next week, y'all.